Hello, beautiful ladies. Welcome back to another Women's Hour. Joined with me tonight, we have Amy. Welcome, Amy.
Hello.
Welcome back. I was worried about where our new guest has gone, but she's
Yes.
just come back. I had to add her manually. Welcome back, our Ash Princess.
Hello. Yes, streaming in from the Soviet Union here. Did just try to edit my avatar, but it's not letting me, I'm afraid. So stuck with Romeo and Juliet for a moment.
It's perfect. Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. I think you're all right with that. And I believe since you were rather late added to the stream, you probably didn't get to watch Ernest and I almost said Ernest and Celeste. That's a different film. Ethel and Ernest is the film we're reviewing tonight. It's on the screen now. You can see. Amy, did you get a chance to watch it, or did you read the book?
I've watched it and I've read the book twice.
Oh, brilliant! Look at you. And Ash, did you get a chance to see this film? Have you ever heard of it or watched it?
You know what? I've never even heard of it, and I'm afraid I haven't watched it. No, so
that's all right.
I'm so sorry about that.
That's all right. You're always welcome on the stream, and you're always a delight to have on. So we don't mind. We don't mind you not doing the homework. Would you rather?
It looks very beautiful, though. I'm curious to hear about it.
Should we do the review first, just because that's what our super chatter paid for? We'll get through that in, I wouldn't say quickly, but in a timely fashion. We'll give it as much time as it deserves. And it was a very good film. I think you liked it as well, Amy. And then we'll get to.
No.
No.
Wow. And then we'll get to my our topic for later tonight, which is something that I think both of you wanted to talk about, which is the trad wife aesthetic, and whether it's a net positive for I don't even know what you'd call it, but for humanity, for progress, for whatever.
The dissident right.
The dissident right, sure. Are we doing ourselves any favors by worshipping these trad wives who go around in wheat fields with flowers in their hair, or should we be more realistic? So we'll be coming to that later. Get your super chats in if you'd like to recommend a topic for next week, or if we can fit it in for this week, we'll answer it then. As always, our highest paying super chat decides what the super chat, the topic that rolls forward to next week will be. So bring those in. We can talk about anything you want. We can review movies. We can debate questions. We can tell you who is the hottest Soviet leader. Whatever you want. We'll debate it. But first, we have to get to our review of Ethel and Ernest, as requested last week. So, I have some images here to discuss. And Amy, since you apparently didn't like this film, why don't you tell us why you didn't like it?
Well, I think first of all, it's based on a book that came out in 1998, I think, by a man called Raymond Briggs, who is most famous for The Snowman. But also, do you like that film?
Not really.
No. And also, can you remember? Did you ever see Father Christmas? I didn't like The Snowman, but I really liked Father Christmas.
Father Christmas is hilarious. Very funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch that.
So these are like cartoons he did. He was basically born in like London to a working class family, which is essentially what Ethel and Ernest is about his parents, dedicated to his parents. And when he grew up, he went to art school, and he's quite famous for sort of like having this sort of grumpy old man working class aesthetic where he sort of rejects, I guess, like where he's like both simultaneously really old fashioned but also rejects the or seems to reject the niceties of sort of like traditional biscuit tin nationalism, I guess. And
he doesn't overly romanticize. What I've seen from his illustrations, that he draws things kind of how they are in real life. I don't know if that's what you mean.
Well, as when we talk about Ethel and Ernest, obviously death and the sort of degeneration of things and sort of almost futility is built into the nature of his work. I mean, that's what happens in The Snowman, right? He wakes up and the snowman's melted.
Yeah. Bruh.
Um,
And also,
yeah.
when the wind blows is another famous one by him, which is it looks like a children's book, but it's actually extremely dark about
I mean, Ethel and Ernest is in theory a children's book when it
Yeah.
clearly isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Where the Wind Blows is about an old couple in the, I think, 80s, and they are following the advice given by the government to the Thatcher era nuclear, what to do during a nuclear war pamphlets, and they follow that and they die of radiation sickness.
Yeah.
And he's the Guardian love him, and I was like looking into his background. The Guardian absolutely love him. He loved Tony Blair, and he was like in art school. He really took a lot of inspiration from the figures of the sort of Northern Renaissance, especially the early Northern Renaissance, and the drawings, the sketches, and prints by people like Bruegel, which is quite that realism.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I mean, I think yes. So yeah, but as I said, I didn't like this.
Okay.
I don't know how you want to go about reviewing it, though.
Well, just to sum it up for people who haven't watched it, I don't think it's not really a film you can spoil. It's just the true story of his parents from when they met to when they died. So it takes place over about 50 years, I'd say, starting in like the 20s or 30s, when there's still horses. There's like backdrops of London throughout. Starts off with sort of horse and carts and bicycles going through the street, and then you get to see Ethel. Sorry, go on.
It started in 1930 and it ends in 1971.
Yeah, so you get to see not just his parents gradually getting older, but you see their lives changing throughout the war, and then after you get to see them celebrating the end of the war, and technology, and it's kind of made up of lots of very short scenes. And maybe you can fill this in for me, Amy, because it seemed like each page of the book would be like a different scene. And so what you're seeing is a animation version of the book where each scene takes place over like between 45 seconds and 2 minutes. And you're sort of just catching up with Ethel and Ernest over the years.
Yeah.
Each scene would be like a few weeks or a few years apart, just to see how they're getting on.
It's not a story in any sense of the word. It's not even weeks. It's each section of the book is a decade. You just kind of see a few key events in, because it's presented as being in their lives, but really what this is politics. Is them reacting to politics. It's not. I didn't see it as being about their lives at all.
Well, there was a lot of their lives in it, in addition to the politics. But you're right that
I actually just to put this into perspective. When I was on the train today, I did a count between the period in which their son was born to the period of him moving out. And what I did, I took a tally of conversations they had about their son versus conversations they had about politics. Okay, so in the period of the book in which the child is born to the child moves out, they talk about their son 6 times directly. They talk about politics 37 times directly in that same period.
Okay. I think I get your point.
Yeah. When politics isn't discussed directly but insinuated throughout their conversations of their son, that occurs 12 times. And they directly react to their son's behavior or something their son's done 5 times within that period.
So you think this is a political film masquerading as a biography?
Yes.
Well, if that were true, I think
an entirely political book.
Well, I can see why you thought that, and it didn't escape my notice. And yet I was utterly charmed by what it was pretending to be, by the animation, by the characters. I liked the voice actors. I thought they did a good job.
Jim Broadbent is a sweetheart.
Yes, I thought Ernest was absolutely charming. I really wanted to like be married to Ernest. I thought he was brilliant.
Yeah, Jim Broadbent's the actor that did his voice.
Yeah, he's a milkman. He starts as a milkman. He supports his family. I think that they allude once to to Ethel having a job after their son grows up. I think when he's evacuated, she talks about working in an office.
She gets a job in the in like a packing factory during the war as part of the war effort, and this is something that is brought up, is that she's just sort of completely enamored by the thought of an office job, and she sticks on because she really wants this office job, and she gets promoted to level B3 in the civil service, which means she can be in an office instead of being in the packaging factory.
I'm just going to go through here. Did you not find the a very sweet romance, the way she starts off just waving to him out of the window every time he goes past? And she's working in this upper class lady's house as a house servant, and that's
chambermaid.
Yeah, she's a chamber. She says she's not a chambermaid, but she definitely is. Some kind of live-in servant for this lady. And Ernest just goes past on the bike every day, and she looks out the window. She like dithers at the window, trying to wait for him to go past so she can wave to him. And then he finally comes to the door and says, asks her out, which is just really sweet. He's 5 years younger than her. Yes.
Yeah.
I love how his personality is so great. The way he's just eternally optimistic and always dancing and laughing and making jokes. I thought he was brilliant. And fixing stuff around the house and bringing home all this stuff that's that he's just found around. It kind of reminded me of my father-in-law, the way that he just like brings stuff home randomly one day. This is his sort of this is their first date where he does a little dance in the street, and that's kind of his personality throughout. Apart from he's such an exuberant character that when he goes through sort of emotional turmoil, it's very heartbreaking to see him getting hurt by first the war and then by his by the deterioration in his wife, in the health of his wife. I think are the two times I could think of. So this is the book. I found an image from this. I have to say, I think I prefer the animation in the. There's a kind of rough-handed charm to the book, but
I prefer the book because I just think it's more. I think they really sort of cleaned it out for the animation, which they've really modernized it, so it looks generic. Whereas I think the book is very clearly a Raymond Briggs book. And I think that Father Christmas and especially the snowman kept it in his style. But I don't know if you've noticed in the snowman that the fact that the surfaces always look like they're moving, like they're constantly moving slightly. So it's probably a lot more difficult to animate something when you've got all of that detail in, because then you've got and then it looks like it's moving, and I kind of like that because it does fit in with the sort of how everything's so fluctuating and temporary. But then I can understand why they'd get rid of that just simply for ease.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I don't want to go too much into it with the snowman, but I think that was like they didn't have to animate all of the edges to be constantly wibbly wobbly and bumping around on purpose. I think that was just a consequence of the fact that they were hand drawing every single frame,
because everything was in so much detail.
Yes, exactly.
That they never did quite add. But they just, because it was rough, it never added up from still to still. So it.
Yeah, I think there was a slightly lifeless look to some of the characters compared to the. I don't know. Some of the stills were very good, and some of them were a little bit, like I said, a bit lifeless. But I love the way that the interiors and the exteriors and everything was drawn. Like the backgrounds, I think, were very well. Like all the colors and the details brought out in this what looks like coloring pencil, the way that he would have originally.
Yeah,
although I think
they've brightened the color up a bit, which I didn't like. I like the drabness of the illustrations.
Okay.
in the book.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, I like the color, and I was looking for the image. I thought I downloaded an image of the exterior of the house where they first see it for the first time. It's a really beautiful London brick house where they live in for their entire lives, and they. I think I called this stream. This is what they took from you because I was so. I was so jealous of this sort of simple life that these two lived on this guy's salary just as a milkman, getting a mortgage for this place, and he said they're paying it over 25 years, and it's like just the perfect little townhouse that I'd love to live in, like a little terraced.
3 guineas a week below the below the poverty line, as they point out.
Yes, yeah. Later, it turns out that he's been working all this time under now what they call the poverty line. So you get to see all this. This is the street they live on. You can see these beautiful houses, and the way that it's brought into color with this sort of what do you call it? It's emerald green railing, which later gets taken away for scrap for the war.
Do you have the rag and bone man? Do you have one of them still? Because we've got one that always goes down our street. They always sound like cockerels. I really like them.
You still got one there? Still got a rag and bone man? That's quite rare.
They just come around the street yelling once a week.
Oh, that's lovely. I like that.
That's great.
Gypsies.
I wanted to ask you, Amy, what you think of Ethel's kind of personality, because she's a little bit she's quite a straightforward woman, but she never comes across as being overly intellectual. Like everything's she seems to be kind of certain of everything that she says, while coming across quite foolish a lot of the time. You might call her a bit of an airhead almost, but with a kind of self-importance to her that was I don't know. It made her a very distinct character she didn't feel like a feminist stereotype that you see in films these days. But Raymond Brigg was basing it on his own mother. What did you think?
She's a very proper person. She doesn't like to think of herself as working class, but obviously she is, and she's very aspirational. And I think that the sort of dynamic of the two was, she likes things to be like just so, right? Like there's a bit in it where she's cleaning her front step and she like thinks her husband is someone else, and she tells him off like, young man, I've just cleaned this step, which is quite a nice sort of to have like I guess a working class with a sense of propriety, which seems to be missing currently, and it reminds me of my nana, who used to lived in one of the like when they created the new council estates after the slum clearances, and she used to polish her letterbox every week with Brasso, and it reminded me of that.
Definitely.
I used to live in quite an unpleasant part of Glasgow called Winford and Maryhill, and there was a woman down the street from me who used to polish the railings on her balcony every week as well, despite the fact it was an absolute like hellscape.
Yes,
and
that's exactly the kind of thing Ethel would do.
Yes, and so she's very dedicated to this this family that she used to work as domestic help for, and she likes the husband likes the changes going on, especially the political changes, the labor, the welfare state, and
Ethel doesn't.
Yes, and she's a lot more conservative, but then she still likes the social progress. I guess she likes the thought of working in an office. To her, like we look now and we think about these sort of millennial women doing email jobs, and just think like how useless that is, and how like why would you ever want to dedicate your life to that over something like forming a family or forming your life around a man? Whereas that's like actual. The thought of that is extremely high status to her, and she kind of wants this social progress, but like to sort of like meld it with like the older customs, right? So you've got these like upper class fashions coming in, about like female liberation, about getting like the discussion about the first female MP. You kind of see it becoming social currency, and then it's in like conflict with these deep-seated values that she has, but it doesn't really matter because like what she focuses on is like niceness, and her devotion to the previous order also is, like you said, that she's a bit of an airhead. It's all just dependent on its perceived niceness, and
Yeah.
you know, it declines the values and justifying rationale for that order just like completely disintegrate, but which are the things that gave it meaning and gave it authority, but they've disappeared, and all that's left is like social customs and like sort of superficial, just like going through the motions. And it's like this world is like going so fast, and you see this in her husband is he's welcoming all the change, but it's going so fast. And then I don't know if you want to spoil the end of the book.
Yeah, I think so.
But you kind of see this, how she dies is dementia, and at the end, the final scene when she's alive in the hospital and she can't comprehend what's going on around her, and she has like the niceness of the flowers, like she keeps calling them lovely. She's like, oh, I'm such a lucky girl, I've just got lovely flowers. And it just reminds me of like, that was how, you know, that was portrayed as sad because that was all she could remember. That's how she's lived her entire life. That's not just a dementia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it was kind of bittersweet that she was still herself so much, even though she couldn't remember.
Yeah.
She couldn't remember who she was or what she was doing, but she still knew that she was lucky to have flowers, and she was still happy to see her family.
But that's the thing, is that that's that's not enough. There's this part when her son gets married and she says oh no, he says they're going to get married in a registry office, and the dad says, well, that's the modern way, and she says, horrible. And he says, yes, but neither of them are religious. And she says, I don't want them to be religious, I just want them to get married in a church, it's so much nicer. And everything's just about how the superficial,
she wants him to
appearances without
she keeps wanting him to comb his hair as well. Once he becomes once he leaves home, every time he comes back, his hair's too messy for her, and she keeps wanting him to comb it or get a haircut. Like she's like she doesn't just do it out of spite. Like she almost doesn't. She can't comprehend that he wants his hair to look like that.
Well, I just think that it's very. I think that it's very tragic. It seems as though she's declining with dementia, but that's how she's lived her whole. That's been her mindset her whole life.
Yeah, they've still got this.
That's the substance of her life.
Yeah, that was definitely the essence of the character that he was getting across. But I think since it was his own mother, I don't know if it seems like he was trying to just portray her honestly but also lovingly. Like he wouldn't have made this film if he didn't love her deeply, but he didn't want to sort of sully that memory by pretending that she was better than she was. And a few of the things she says are quite they come across as quite unkind in the context, like when he says that they don't want to have children, and she's again very disapproving of that. That's all she, of course she wanted to be a grandmother, and she's not very kind about his wife for that reason. But she's never nasty as a thing.
House a dump. Well, yeah, she called his new house a dump when he bought his first house.
It was a lovely little house in the countryside that he with beautiful view. And
but I don't see it as a sweet and romantic story about his parents. It's about them having it's about, with regards to the character of his mum, it's about her having everything that she's ever held dear in her life completely hollowed out until she is just this sort of vegetable who can't think of anything other than what's nice.
Yeah.
I don't think that's like sweet.
Do you think he was being? Do you think
a way to portray a parent? I think he was making a political point. I think it's especially stark considering that it was released, in 1998, and this is considered to be some sort of nostalgic, sweet story about his parents. This like sort of traditional, simple story of a couple growing up. and growing old together. And it's a series of political events that occurred within the UK that led to the other main thing that happened in the year in which he was writing this, which is a Tony Blair's election, who he supported.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you think then he was being unkind to his mother, or do you think his mother really was like that? Or both?
I don't think it's about him being unkind to his mother. I think it's about not having that. This is it. The consistent social and technological progress is it. It's completely dominated this family life, and I think that you see this in the character of the dad, who's a lot more. He's a sort of brighter one, I guess, but he's like so enamored with technology and progress that he invites all of this into his life. But then these are the issues that contribute to like the brutality of the war, which he's so against. And his son needs to be evacuated. His son's nearly killed by a doodle bug. He sees when he's working as a fireman during the war, he sees all the dead children in the docks. And then there's one point in it where he holds up his son's his son's teddy bear after an air raid, and it's got like just shards of glass through it.
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, it's a good job that our son's in the country, isn't it?" And I kind of feel like that like just displays his complete inability to preserve like the innocence of his family, the innocence and safety of his wife and child, and his complete lack of dominion over their family life, and his complicity in their destruction.
What did you think of Ethel and Ernest sleeping in the they were sleeping in the kitchen in a little cage, like an air raid cage?
The Morrison shelter. Yeah.
I've seen those. I remember those from like primary school history lessons. Yeah. But I thought, I don't know. Somehow it just looks so weird, just so how strange it was to live through this time with just sleeping on the floor in a bed in a cage.
I can't remember the name of them, but the shelter outside.
Is it the Anderson shelter?
Yes, that's it. I think that sounds way more exciting.
And Ethel painted
it. I remember trying to like construct one out of cardboard at primary school. Yeah, scary.
I wish I had a picture of that. And Ethel plants she plants flowers all over the top of it. This is the page you were talking about with the teddy bear. Just before that, is another kind of visceral moment in the film where they just their house is not bombed, but the shockwaves from a nearby bomb just shatters everything. And she says the front door's halfway up the stairs. They're just sort of looking at their house in disbelief. They can't believe how wrecked it is. Like you wake up one morning and your front door is halfway up the stairs. It's quite a shocking thing to have happened.
Yeah.
And they're just glad that nobody died. So I guess that's what I kind of got from the film, is just all of these little vignettes about wartime life between this quite sweet couple who were, I think, probably overly caricaturized, maybe for the sake of time, but
the simplicity of the short little book, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a cartoon.
Yeah. I think you are right that it was overly politicized. Like Raymond Briggs couldn't help. He couldn't restrain himself from letting his own opinions talk through his parents.
Even the story of his own parents, and it just it just shows how like every little thing in life that we've ever held dear to us has just been taken away from us, like just scooped out and politics put in its place.
I'm quite conscious of time. Did you have any closing points, or do you want to get on to our next topic, Amy?
No, I wouldn't say it's for children.
No, it's definitely not for children.
It's for adults.
Would you recommend it to our viewers?
Adults. I'd recommend it as a piece of social history, as the book I would, yeah. I got it in a charity shop. You probably find one. I'd recommend Father Christmas at Christmas.
I'll have to watch that because I really don't. I remember really Father Christmas was in The Snowman, but the character was.
I loved how he had pictures of like really sunny holiday resorts in his home.
He's basically like really irate and kind of annoyed that I mean, he doesn't hate his job, but he just wants a holiday. He just wants a break. And it's basically, it's the
He just
story of
longs
him
to
trying
go
to take
to
a vacation,
Hawaii.
right?
Yeah,
But
and it's
everywhere he
Hawaii,
goes,
so-
like it's either tea cold or tea hot, and he just wants to sit down with a cup of tea. But also, there's always someone ringing the doorbell, or it's very funny.
I'll read the super chat from the English Soil List before we move on. For $9.99, thank you very much. Something noticed: men give flowers when going on dates. Women give men flowers when going off to war. Curious, do you know when the tradition of giving flowers came from? Another fun stream, Poe. I don't know where it came from. I've always supposed that flowers are just very pretty because they attract bees to them, and that's why people cut them off and display them in their homes and give them to ladies.
Bee collectors?
No, I'm saying that bees enjoy the flower evolved to have the plants evolved to have beautiful flowers to attract bees to come and pollinate
that people
them.
were giving each other flowers because they wanted to attract bees into their house. I'm like, have I been missing something?
Honey for honey.
Yeah.
I think the Victorians there was a very beautiful book. It's called The Language of Flowers. So the Victorians obviously placed a lot of emphasis on the emblematic symbology of. They were very sort of superstitious and mystical, and I think that they had what they called the posy, like a little bouquet, a miniature bouquet of flowers, like a posy would be gifted to a sweetheart. Yeah, wildflowers. There's an old text called The Language of Flowers. I think it's illustrated by Kate Greenaway. And there's another one on Shakespeare's, The Language of Shakespeare's Flowers, or Shakespeare's Flower Gardens, which were very big. But I think it comes from some of the earliest, like alongside the ecclesiastical manuscripts, some of the earliest were botany-based, mostly because of their sort of medicinal and alchemical properties. So I think obviously flowers, and what they call the language or properties of flowers have always been very, they've always seemed to have a great role in, I suppose also because they're free and they grow free in the countryside.
They start off that way, yeah.
They're a nice little jester, aren't they, I suppose? And each one's meant to have its own sort of character or temperament. Yeah.
Like you're saying something about the woman you're giving them to.
Yeah, like forget-me-nots, of course, or sweet peas. Yeah. Very sweet.
Yeah. Oh, we've got some lovely flowers on the screen. I thought I'd leave this up for our discussion because I think this Ethel and Ernest lifestyle is what a lot of guys who want they're looking for the trad wife, or they're lusting after girls on Twitter calling themselves trad wives and seeking to be bred by right-wing men or who. I don't know how many of these accounts are real and how many of them are just feds, but
Ethel's 37 when she gives birth to Raymond in the book, and that was the same in real life as well.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on there. Reading between the lines, it seems that Ethel was a bit past her prime, and that was perhaps why she was willing to marry a man who was below the class that she thought she was sort of in. She seemed to self-identify as being a bit more haughty, but because she
definitely loved him.
She definitely loved him.
Definitely loved her.
Yeah.
He looks sweet.
There's a bit where she says, like, "Oh, I could have married an exciting job," and he says, "Well, why didn't you then?" And she's like, "Because I didn't love him."
Yeah.
And then there's a bit in bed when they're in bed, and he's like, "Oh, this is another one where he's bring up politics for no reason." And he says, "Oh, in Germany, it's illegal for a Jew to marry a German," and she says, "Oh, I'd hate to marry a German." Like, how many times have you had your boyfriend has attempted to make a serious conversation with you, and you're like, "Oh, yes. I wouldn't want to date him."
That's
It's not about you, Ethel. That's funny.
I don't know. I think you two were having an interesting conversation about this on Twitter, like this archetype. I don't know what you call it. This aesthetic that both women and men are kind of aspiring to these days, where they want to get married to a wife who wears summer dresses and who grows her own vegetables and who's going to give birth to dozens of children and home educate and be like a woman from a bygone era. And I think both of you were, for different reasons, saying that this is unrealistic or undesirable.
No,
So,
I think it's undesirable. I don't think it's. Well, I think obviously it's unrealistic. I think it's actively a bad thing to be
Go on, then.
promoting. Containment. I think you.
Why is
you
it
have this,
containment?
you kind of have these like two like. I don't know, I think women are kind of seen in these as like symbols in these two ways, and you kind of they're there's something to come home to escape from modernity, like an eternal presence. But then at the same time, women are notoriously like fickle, right? And subject to like social whims and like following fashions and trends that aren't necessarily good. And trad wife meme seems to take the negative aspect of the two and combine them into just into this idea of the sort of life of this. It kind of takes the zeitgeist and turns it into something that is like the world in these images are very internally focused, right? There's like it's like your wife, maybe a couple of children, no one else around, not even a village. It's like one cottage in nature. And to me, this is just reminds me of, the sort of idea of the sort of earth mammy that Bap talks about. Like,
You mean
to me,
the milk
this
breeder?
is what the milk breeder, yes.
Yes, I love that.
Women, what it seems to be is that we've got these like really like dire issues as a society, and really at the time when men need to be stepping up and and putting things on the line and taking risks in order to create something better going forward. This seems to be a way to reorient men back towards
Domesticity?
back away from that and into something tame and domestic. To me, this just seems like it simply makes men safe. And I think that the reason women participate so much in this, and I think the reason why, I don't know if you've noticed, but you can't like get away from this even in liberal things. This is a thing that you get. This sort of lifestyle is promoted by the BBC in things like Country File and Gardener's World, and you have all of these the Yorkshire Shepherdess on ITV, all of these TV shows that focus on this, and it just seems to be. I think the liberals allow it because it keep if men are focusing on stuff like that, then they're not, focusing on focusing on organizing together in masculine spaces. And I think women like it because it men have been turning away from women as a result of feminism because of the complete lack of femininity and sort of this sort of scalding men. And then
so what do you think men should be doing? They should be planning a revolution, not trying to get married.
I think that I think that there should be men should be focusing on capable men and should be focusing on things outside of simply forming their own little tiny unit. I think that they should be focusing on pursuits beyond that. And those things are risky, right? Even as a sort of normie conservative, those things are risky. That's just the sense I get. It gives me a bad vibe. And you see this in as soon as a woman on social media rejects current year feminism and embraces something like 1980s feminism. There's accounts online that male accounts where they're showing their faces and stuff, and they're just willing to completely give up on any sort and anything to do any other issues the dissident right is concerned with at the thought of a woman with 1980s feminism. They're like, yes, a woman with it will give up everything else in order for that. And it's like,
well, why do they have to give it? Like, why can't they have both? I mean, not that this woman is like
I don't think it
worth it, but what are they giving up? I mean, I don't understand why the containment is. If they are you saying that these guys are so frustrated by modern life, because but then if you just gave them what they wanted, which is a wife and a family, and a farmhouse, that they would just be so satisfied they wouldn't even bother doing anything else.
Yeah. And then everything would just go on around them. They'll continue to destroy our culture and our institutions. And
I think you're probably right. But I also think that men are going to. That's probably true whether you give it a trad wife aesthetic or not. There's a subsection of angry men online who are ready to stop being angry. Go on.
The trad wife aesthetic just takes it so far to a point where it's like, how can you not tell what these women are doing? Like, how can you not? Like, it's so blatant.
Well, I think women seeking attention online is inevitable, and men giving into the masculine urge to simp for women online. There's always going to be men who do that. Not that I encourage it, but I think it's taking that as the baseline expectation. I think it's generally positive that what is now being celebrated is not the vapid consumerism and hardcore pornography and anime cosplaying, and guys looking for a hot gamer girl who's like a Sam Harris atheist logical fan. But they're now. I think the fact that they're looking for someone who has good wholesome ethics and modest aesthetics. I think that the fact that they're now idolizing something that I think of as broadly more positive, at least compared to the.
I think that men should be focusing on pursuits, on useful pursuits that are not to do with women.
Yeah, I mean, I think I broadly agree, but how many? That's just not a realistic expectation for single men. Like single men are attracted to Twitter accounts featuring hot girls. Whether they do it in in a degenerate way or in a more sort of reasonable way, it's just like it's like asking moths not to go to fire.
No, I think that there's good men out there within this community who I think their goals have been made so much. Their goals seem to just have narrowed so much at the thought of a nice, sweet woman and a country home, and it's like they're not going to leave you alone.
Well, yeah,
you've got. This
I know what you mean,
and and I do think that. I mean, these villages in the country, they're also they're just used as places. They're just places where liberal women go on holiday.
Do you not think that
your traditional community where just like it exists to have Airbnb cottages so women can go and spend their week outside of South London and buy some Emma Bridgewater mugs to take back to her like nice townhouse?
Oh, what is the alternative? That these should be genuine farming communities living here, or that
I think there isn't an alternative yet, and I think that we're not going to get at one through this route.
We've got a super chat here before we come to what the Ash Princess thinks of this. DRT is king for $10. Thank you very much. Says. Here's a review of a movie, the most masculine of romantic movies, Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart. It's a good movie, and I'd like to see you take a crack at it. Okay, well, if we don't get any higher paying super chats, that will be our topic for next time. Will be a review of Casablanca. Ash, what do you think of all this? Yeah. You're muted right now.
Oh, I was muted. I'm ever so sorry. Okay, so look, I would say I think it's lovely actually that men. I would much rather see our men long for, I think, as you said, Poe, an aesthetic, as a sort of aspirational aesthetic that is broadly more positive, far more so than, say, the strippers and red light districts and the sort of horrid, sort of grotty OnlyFans culture that we're in. And I would say generally that seems like a perfectly healthy and reasonable aspirational fantasy. I think just as women, myself included, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting a sort of a wholesome life of a good husband and a little cottage somewhere with fat, chubby cherub children. I'd much rather see men want to sort of have that as an aspiration. I think what I have a problem with the trad life girl is, I guess it just comes back to LARPing. So one thing I've always find sort of off-putting about the more female side of nationalism is often what I feel is like a hollow and very affected quote-unquote wisdom. A lot of pages I used to follow on femininity and Aryan aesthetics, if you like, ended up feeling actually quite sterile and very postured with no real substance. And, obviously endless pictures of blonde women running through cornfields in a white dress. I know that's a bit of a meme. And I think
Taylor Swift music video. It's a 2008 Taylor Swift music video.
Oh, is that where it comes from?
I mean, but that's just what it reminds me of.
Oh, I see. Well, I mean, it's a very lovely aesthetic, and I think probably quite healthy to aspire to be the best polished version of yourself. And we know, myself included, women have become maybe not as feminine as they could be, and it's helpful to know that that's what men desire, so we can sort of try and craft ourselves to be more akin to what they find attractive, but rather than what feminists tell us is attractive, which is hairy armpits and nose rings. But I think my only concern, I don't even know if it's a concern, but I'm very interested in what is authentic and long-lasting and substantive. And I think sometimes I worry that the kind of girls online with these accounts, if you like, I don't know whether it's just a fad or a passing fashion and trend. And I think there's more to being the trad wife than simply taking out a tray of freshly baked cookies. And I kind of tested this on Twitter recently. I posted something about how a reality of a trad life was actually a lot of the times it's a lot of like dirty scrubbing of floors, changing crappy nappies. Like, it's hard work. You don't actually I think it probably is I find it hard myself. So I think I'm going to struggle even more when I become a mummy. But, having to juggle looking beautiful in the beautiful dress with the kids looking immaculate house, freshly baked, organic sourdough bread and etc. and so on. I'm sure it can be done. And I must say, you make it look easy, but which is a compliment, by the way. But I think sometimes, there is a lot of grit that goes into it, and I think we have to be realistic that we can't sort of look around and pick this sort of thing off a shelf. Sometimes I get the impression a big thing at the moment is, why are there no virgin girls, right? But this is after like a decade or so of someone like Rouge Fille being very popular, and like the whole manosphere talking about spinning plates. You can't really have a virgin after a lifetime of spinning plates because you've not led a life that's conducive to it. So I think we all have to accept that it's going to take a little bit of time to get back to a social context where you can have that lifestyle, but it's sort of, you can't just be immediately delivered it unwrap it out of a box or order it off eBay. And these sorts of Instagram girls, unfortunately, I think they sort of promise a life that maybe you're longing for, but it's not necessarily going to be delivered. You have to create that. Am I making sense? I don't know.
But this is the issue. It's the same as mine. It's this that we keep talking about aesthetics. It's not about aesthetics. There's no point in trad aesthetics and nothing else because it's not going to exist. Well, these traditional communities are based on metaphysical truths on what is good and what is bad, and if we do not have those, then a community like this cannot exist. And we don't have those anymore because they've been systematically destroyed over the past at the very least past like 120 years, likely more, right? And what we need are people who are going to build and create and think and write and articulate. And if we have men just thinking, it's enough that I can just leave, opt out, and just and focus on myself and the people in my immediate vicinity who I care about, and let everything else go to the dogs, if that is never going to happen. It's just not.
I think I just want to, like, I know I made this point already, but I think you really can't emphasize enough how bad things are as they are. So I'd say that for the first time in maybe decades, there's women who are excited about the idea of being a mummy and being a good wife, like maintaining their chastity until marriage, or until they've met the right man who they want to settle down with, after decades and decades of feminism and having the pill, and society teaching women that they should be out pursuing their own short-term pleasure, their own careers as an aspiration, and then women not really understanding not understanding the mistake of that until it's far too late.
This is about women, but I see this as about men. The woman is like, it doesn't matter. It's a distraction. It's about having men who are empowered to take risks and to go out into the world and to create something of worth and to develop skills they can.
But what is their reward for that going to be? Is it going to be like a 30?
I'll use Alex as an example. Alex has never settled down until late in life. He spent his entire life, first of all, struggling, building his life around the pursuit of making art, and then because of the what he saw going on in the art world, destroyed his career as an artist in order to essentially reveal the corruption that was going on, and as a result of that, he's able to found a life in which yes, it's not the most stable life, but he's able to at least say that if he's made an impact on the world, even if it's not very big. And that's something that he would never have been able to do if he'd just sort of like settled down, because he wouldn't have been able to take those risks.
I understand what you mean.
And the reward in life is the meaning it's given his life, and it's the knowledge that he has sacrificed virtually everything in order to have a positive impact on the world.
It's I think well established that men who are married and who have a family have lower risk-taking behavior because they are providers and they feel that obligation. It makes them live more safely, and in today's climate that means being quiet when perhaps you need to make some noise. So I think you're probably right about that.
Unsullied minority, AA calls it.
Let me tell you what I'm worried about, because I think there's a chance that what many men who are single take for positive action is really just shitposting on Twitter. And they're not like Alex. They're not creating beautiful art or defending the good art that's been done over centuries of Western civilization. They're not writing good articles. They're not really doing anything that has a positive change. But there's some pride they can have in purity, where they go like, I'm not going to sully myself trying to marry one of these women who's been ruined by feminism. I'd rather spin my plates and get my rocks off that way while I write screeds on on my Substack that nobody's reading. So what they're doing is they're trying to attain that what do you call it, the monk mindset. You know, that they want to be the someone like Alex, but they don't really have any talent. They don't have they're not doing anything positive. When
I see
they
lots
really
of men in this community who do, who have that, and the thought and that they're, you know, other people are not, like, you know, most people, obviously the average person is average, but at least to bring about these ideas of there's more out there in the world than what we've been given and what the sort of trad accounts have to offer is extremely important.
Well, maybe there's a certain kind of man who has the competence and the intelligence and the drive to really do something with his life, to make these positive changes in the world, and maybe to, you know, one day become the leader of some kind of important movement. But I think for most men, their family will be the greatest achievement of their lives, and that might sound sad to some to some men who wanted to achieve more. But I think the sad reality is that most people don't achieve much of a lot of importance from their career or through their art. And the best thing that they can do is to set up the next generation to have good moral standards, to have to understand their place in the world, and to pass on the knowledge that came from the knowledge and the culture of our previous generations to the next generation, so that it will, you know, to pass the torch on and continue the tradition. I think that really is the best that a lot of men can aspire to.
I think that it's quite, it runs a risk of preventing those that do have potential from fulfilling that.
Perhaps.
So
I think
those exceptional ones, or those ones that are better, won't achieve what they're capable of, and that'll be a detriment to us all, because it is the work of high achieving men that have the most impact. And if we're preventing those men from going out there and doing that and dedicating a significant portion of their life, of their better years to it, then that's never going to happen.
Well, I think the best of men, these high achievers, these future leaders, they're not, you know, we don't have to worry about them, because they've already got it sorted. They're not lusting after women holding milk jugs on Twitter. We don't have to worry about them. The best of them won't be distracted by things that are less,
from a young age.
Perhaps. I think if you look at AA, I mean, he's on a second marriage now, and he's had a kid. And if anything, it's only fueled his misogyny and his distaste for it.
His lovable misogyny.
It's also lovable these days.
But I would say, like, honestly, Poe, I think you're right in saying that. I would say things are changing. I see far more women less inclined to be rabid feminists and far more interested in listening to. I mean, there are a few, I can't think off the top of my head, but there's far more emphasis on femininity. It's going to take time to get there, though, and it's not. We're not going to be able to buy it off the shelf. But you know, there's no reason men can't have that. But it just takes work to create it with the right person. And it's important not to resent it if it doesn't fall into your lap immediately. You know,
I can't help thinking that women just have a sort of shit's gonna go down sort of radar, and you know, women are becoming more feminine because they realize that the times are going to get tough and they need the protection of a man, and this is the best way to do it. I don't think it's a result of you know, as soon as things start getting, you know, better again, you know, she's gonna go back to being a hoe.
I guess we'll see. Sergeant Hoddle for $20. Wamen Frog Show suggestion. Should anime be abolished? I've heard young people say it's turning the kids rainbow and strange, and there seems to be some truth in that. But I don't know. Some anime is fun though, in my opinion.
Anime in the water, turning the kids gay.
Yeah. I'll try and get some more anime fan. I think Cows is a secret anime fan, so I'd like to get her back on and we'll have a proper debate with the anti-degeneracy crew versus the weebs, our female weebs. So thank you for that, Sergeant Hoddle. That's our highest super chat so far. Probably going to be the winner, since it was at the end of the show now. But we might have a competitor from DRT is King is back for $10. I want to prevent the anime skeed from being discussion, since it's both wordless.
Discussed it.
And I dare say pointless, while getting a fresher take on a classic movie is better. Well, we've got ourselves a bidding war, ladies. We've got DRT is King battling it out with Sergeant.
Up your bids, boys.
Look,
We talked about anime in the OnlyFans and anime episode, you and Kawas talked about waifus.
That was about waifus. Yes, it was. That was a slightly different question, though. We didn't. It was never on the table that we were going to abolish anime. We were only talking about the attributes of the classic anime waifu and whether they're realistic. That was the question. So, if anyone would like to contribute to either DRT is King talking about Casablanca or Sergeant Hoddle, if you'd like to contribute to the bidding war on either side, please send in your super chats and I'll add them to the totals. So. So we'll only get the winner.
A super chat there.
Did I miss one?
A $20 one, yeah.
Yeah, that was the one about anime. Should anime be abolished? From Sergeant Hoddle. So we'll see. I think so far we've got $20 plus the other one. Yeah, so we've got $20 versus $20.01 for Casablanca so far. So. We'll see. So far, Casablanca's winning by 1 cent. This was always my dream for Women's Hour, but I think
Casablanca versus anime. Imagine an anime adaptation of Casablanca.
I'm sure it's been done. Some of my favorite things are. Yeah, it's really killing me because I'm sure there was a story that I read today that I wanted to put right at the end of Women's Hour. What was that, David? Do you know what it was? Lesbians the lesbians on Twitter. No, it wasn't that.
On Twitter.
Lesbians were trending on Twitter today. That's
while you think about it, I'm gonna show the chat the dog.
Go ahead.
Doggo. What's the name of the doggo? Or is it classified?
Zara.
Zara. Ah.
Yeah. Hey.
Hey, Zara. Hey, doggo.
That's Zara.
Hi, Sarah.
Oh, yeah, there's absolutely no way I'm going to remember this.
He's chilling.
Unless I liked it on Twitter. This is my last resort. There's been a lot of stuff about the mermaids on on Twitter today.
Oh, yeah.
Has it been abolished?
Mermaids? Not the organisation. The Ariel.
Oh, no,
the Disney mermaid.
I could review that.
We should, yeah. Yeah, there's absolutely no way I'm going to remember what the story was, so either I'll bring it up next week or I'll just forget it. I have a video out today. Go check that out, as always. Amy, anything to plug? Anything you've written or made?
Yeah, I last week and then the week before, I was on a double proper horror show double feature special. So 2 weeks ago we did The Haunting, the film from the 60s, and then last week we did The Haunting of Hill House, the Netflix adaptation from a few years ago. So they're both adaptations of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, and we discussed those last week and the week before on Proper Horror Show, and they were good fun.
Cool.
Let's go and watch them.
And Fash Princess, I believe you have a YouTube channel, but it's undisclosed. So
it's a little on hiatus at the moment, just from lots of things going on IRL. But I hope to be back to it soon. But I'm enjoying watching all content from everybody.
It was you. You're the one. You suggested a topic I wanted to talk about on Women's Hour. It was about Garys.
Oh, Gary! Yeah, the names Garys are going extinct because nobody's naming their babies Gary.
There will be no Garys left in Britain by 2050. There have been no Garys have been born in Britain since 1992.
Can't believe it.
According to this
I love
article.
that it's like no Garys have been born, as though you're born a Gary. You're not named Gary. You're born a Gary. My old politics teacher at A level was called Gary. He was called Gaz. That's what everyone called him.
Gaz.
Gaz.
Well, one of the comments asked, was
and
it
what
Gary
he
Glitter
wore-
or Gary Lineker that ruined it, you know?
And every day he wore tracksuit, the Adidas tracksuit bottoms with the lines up them, Doc Martens, and a Fred Perry polo shirt with his collar turned up. That was like his uniform.
That's
Of
classic
course he
Gaz.
did. That's so Gary there, isn't it?
Our buildings manager where I work is called Gary. It's such a buildings manager Gary kind of name. I remember. Did you ever watch? Richard Hammond used to have a talk show at 5 o'clock. When like over 15 years ago now. I have no idea what it was called, but I remember they had a segment about Barrys. Before Gary, it was Barry that was going extinct, and they gave a prize to the first woman who would name her son Barry, and they actually brought him out on the show, like this little baby who'd been called Barry.
Oh, what was the prize?
I think they just gave him like a cash prize. It was like £1,000 or something.
Hey, that's not bad.
I'd call my son Gary for £1,000.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Barry from EastEnders.
Yeah, that's poor old Gary. Maybe one day when we're old ladies, all the old names will start coming back, and Gary will start to sound like a really old-fashioned name that women want to call their sons.
It'll be a trad name by that time.
Like what Ed Dutton said, that people are just trying to show their individuality by giving their kids stupid names, and that the most subversive thing you can do now is just give your kid like a normal name. So like maybe we should all call our kids, if we're gonna have loads of like, dozens of home educated kids on your homestead, call them all Gary.
You first, Amy. You first. I'll follow your lead. How about that?
Speaking of individual names, did you see? I don't know how many people watching this know who Trisha Paytas is, but
Yes.
she had a baby this week called Malibu Barbie Paytas.
I saw it trending and I clicked. I thought, what? They've brought out a new Barbie, and it was a baby.
Oh, baby is cute though.
Baby
Gotta give
Malibu
it that.
Barbie. Yeah.
And her husband is surprisingly handsome, or the father of the baby at least.
Yeah.
Is that the one that's Gila Klein's brother?
No, it's not her. No, it's Trish Paytas is she was a co-host of the Frenemies podcast with Ethan Klein. If that's why you're thinking.
She married. That's Gila Klein's brother. So that
she married her brother. I never knew that.
Yeah. So that's actually they're related.
It looks like her actually. Now that you mention it, I think you must be right.
She's
amazing.
That's right, because they don't. I don't think they're terribly fond of her. Are they?
Yeah, I kind of feel, because they had like drama before that. I kind of feel like she just did it as a troll.
Oh gosh.
All right, well, we're going to end this show before we get too much into celeb news and drama. Congratulations to Trisha Paytas. You have a beautiful baby with a very silly name. Thank you ever so much to my panelists for joining me tonight, and thank you for our viewers, and especially for our super chats. It looks like we'll be reviewing Casablanca, which I'm delighted about. So see you next time for a Casablanca review, and whatever other random news stories and topics we can pull out of a hat. Good night, ladies. Amy?
Good night.
Good night.
Ash.
Someone says, how high does
Goodbye,
the that need to be for the ladies to have a child named Gary? You know, that's up for both to decide.
100K.
We'll do it. Good night, everyone.
Night night.